Great blessings to all, and welcome to Mikael Messenger. It's great to be with you on this fine day. We're going to be together again tonight for our live, as we always do on Wednesday, so be sure to join us for that as well. This is just a quick update about what's happening in the world. And before I start, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel so you can get more updates like this. Hit the notification bell so that you won't miss any of our videos as they arise. It's great to see Bobby. Hey, how you doing? Lynn, great to see you. Wendy, all right. It's good to see you guys. Well, the U.S. has launched an ICBM capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. You know, it's one thing when you hear about it happening in a far-off place, but when it's in your own country, it starts to get a little more real. You start to feel it a little bit more. Hey, Carl, how's it going? And so they have launched an ICBM missile. I have to say, it looks very impressive, even somewhat beautiful, I have to say, the way it's pictured here. But we know that it represents something quite terrible and quite horrific. And if they're testing it, it's probably because they're thinking they may need to use it. It's not something you test every day, launching an intercontinental ballistic missile capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. They can travel, I believe it's 6,000 miles. And, I didn't map China to USA, but it'd be interesting to take a look at that and to see how many miles they're going to need to go, or to Russia, should they ever launch this. The United States military announced the test of a Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile, which had been delayed to avoid escalating tensions with Beijing during a show of force by China near Taiwan earlier this month. The U.S. today conducted a test launch of an unarmed Minuteman ballistic missile to demonstrate the readiness of U.S. nuclear forces and provide confidence in the lethality and effectiveness of the nation's nuclear deterrent. You know, we do seem a little too confident, and I'm wondering, I'm thinking Area 51 here. I'm thinking, do we have some secrets up our sleeve, militarily? Because, from the outlook of things, it seems like we're outnumbered by Russia's nuclear missiles, and that we're outdated by China's nuclear missiles. And so it makes you think, are we ready for a conflict? Not that anybody's going to win a nuclear war, but you at least like to have a fighting chance, I suppose, or at least be able to try to take them out before they hit you. Hey, Christy, good to see you. Dunamis, good to see you guys. And so it's intriguing to me. I kind of wonder what they have up their sleeve, that there may be some things that aren't public knowledge that they may pull out should we go into a conflict here. Of course, they want a war, and they want the U.S. to be destroyed, because that's the only way they're going to bring in the one world government, which is what they want to do. So they want to get rid of the U.S. So they're probably not really looking to defend the U.S. all that strongly anyway. But it is kind of interesting to wonder what we have up our sleeve. So the role of Minuteman III says the Minuteman III, which can carry a nuclear warhead, is made by Boeing and is key to the U.S. military strategic arsenal. The missile has a range of 6,000 plus miles and a speed of about 15,000 miles per hour. Wow. 15,000 miles per hour? Wow, that's pretty fast. So the U.S. Air Force Global Strike Command conducted a test launch of the Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile. So let's take a look at this briefly here. Just kind of see what this looks like. Wow. That is pretty, lights up the sky. And not the kind of fireworks you want to see, though, coming from you or at you. Because if it's coming from you, there's some coming at you, too. So kind of intense there. See if, look, this here you can see it actually opening, the portal opening. That's kind of interesting. So it's coming out of the hole there in the ground and being launched. So that is pretty intense. The U.S. Air. Wow. says the U.S. Air Force Global Strike Command conducted test launch of the Minuteman. Okay, so that's the same thing there. So it's pretty interesting. We used to be back in the 80s, everybody was kind of talking a big game, but there wasn't really much pushing toward an actual nuclear war because everybody knew that would be insane. But when you get a bunch of insane people leading all your nations, well, then you kind of get insanity. Just kind of goes that way. Let's see. What's this one? I think this is the actual portal opening of the... Air Force Global Command Airmen conducted an operational test launch. Let's see. The U.S. nuclear forces and provide confidence in the lethality. I think you can actually see it. I remember seeing it earlier. So you can see it open here. That's the little cap covering the hole where the missile is. And then the missile comes out of the hole and shoots into the sky. So that is pretty intense. So yeah. So it's kind of intriguing. Biblically, there is some precedent for this, and we are kind of watching from this from a biblical standpoint. In Ezekiel 39, God talks about this war that, this attack that the Prince of Rosh and all the nations with him are making. Ezekiel 38, and in 39, he says, Son of man, prophesy against Gog and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I'm against you, Gog, chief prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal. I will turn you around and drag you along. I will bring you from the far north, which that's about as far north as you get, is Russia, and send you against the mountains of Israel. Then I will strike your bow from your left hand and make your arrows drop from your right hand. On the mountains of Israel you will fall, you and all your troops and the nations with you. I will give you as food to all kinds of carrion birds and to the wild animals. You will fall in the open field, for I have spoken, declares the sovereign Lord. I will send fire on Magog and on those who live in safety in the coastlands. A lot of people believe the coastlands is us in the U.S. because we have coastlands. We've got the Atlantic and the Pacific that are protecting the U.S. and keeping it isolated. So God's going to send fire on both. So because, obviously if they launch, we're going to launch, right? So everybody's going to get their share of nuclear missiles. I mean, Putin can threaten nuclear missiles all he wants, but he knows we're going to launch some too, so it's not something anybody really wants because you're going to end up getting nuked also. I will make note, but they may try to do an EMP so that we can't do that. Of course, we do have planes and submarines and things that may be able to evade the EMP. I will make known my holy name among my people. I will no longer let my holy name be profaned, and the nations will know that I, the Lord, am the Holy One in Israel. So he's going to send fire on both countries, right? And then he says, it is coming. It will surely take place, declares the sovereign Lord. This is the day I have spoken of. Then those who live in the towns of Israel will go out and use the weapons for fuel and burn them up, the small and large shields, the bows and arrows, the war clubs and spears. For 7 years they will use them for fuel. So we know there's a 7-year span of time that we still need to have for this to be fulfilled. And so, we are looking at a 7-year tribulation about to begin officially, and us to be taken out of here biblically before God brings his wrath upon the earth. And so they will be using the weapons for fuel. And I want to show you something there that kind of ties into that interestingly. It says they will not need to gather wood from the fields or cut it from the forest because they will use the weapons for fuel. And they will plunder those who plundered them and loot those who looted them, declares the sovereign Lord. Now think about it. After nuclear war, you don't have a lot of fuel. It's kind of like Mad Max. And if you've ever seen that movie, or Road Warrior, where you're kind of fighting over fuel. That's what those movies were about. They were fighting over fuel. And it was basically after a nuclear war, because after a nuclear war, everything's been destroyed and decimated, but you're trying to keep your cars running, and you're trying to, fuel is a great commodity next to food and water, because it allows you to travel and allows you to power things. So they want to go out and take all the fuel that they can get from the weapons of war that were used. On that day, I will give Gog a burial place in Israel in the valley of those who travel east. It will block the way of travelers because Gog and all his hordes will be buried there, so it will be called the valley of Hamon Gog. For 7 months, now this is interesting, kind of ties into nuclear war potential. For 7 months, the Israelites will be burying them in order to cleanse the land. Kind of interesting term being used there. And it uses it again. All the people of the land will bury them, and the day I display my glory will be a memorable day for them, declares the sovereign Lord. People will be continually employed in cleansing the land. That's an interesting job. Continually employed in cleansing the land. Sounds like when you have to clean up from a nuclear strike, right? There's nuclear contamination everywhere, and it's an ongoing job to deal with that contamination so that you can have life can continue. They will spread out across the land, and along with others, they will bury any bodies that are lying on the ground. After the 7 months, they will carry out a detailed search. So not just so for 7 months, they're going to kind of bury everything, and then after 7 months, they're going to carry out even more detailed search, trying to get all the nuclear waste, I imagine. And they go through the land. As they go through the land, anyone who sees a human bone will leave a marker beside it, so they won't touch it, right? And they, they'll say, hey, there's some over here, until the gravediggers bury it in the valley of Hamon Gog, near a town called Hamona, and so they will cleanse the land. So it talks a lot about cleansing the land, which is kind of intriguing when you think about nuclear fallout. All right, so they talk about using the fuel, and I was kind of looking up. I was wondering, are the Ukrainians already using the fuel? Is this already starting to be fulfilled with the Prince of Rosh? It says Russia has reportedly lost more than 650 tanks and about 3,000 other armored vehicles and heavy equipment so far in its invasion of Ukraine. So that's a lot of equipment. Experts put the losses down to the advanced anti-tank weapons given to Ukraine by Western countries, poor strategy, low morale, and important design flaws. So they've already lost all this equipment, and a lot of it has been abandoned equipment. It says out of the 664 tanks that Russia has lost in Ukraine, 283 were abandoned or captured, which means fuel, right? 283 tanks that they can take the fuel from because they weren't blown up, they weren't destroyed, they were just abandoned or captured. Now, they might have been abandoned because they ran out of fuel. That's one reason to abandon them, but they were also captured. So it could be that they're already starting to use the fuel if they're in that, in a desperate situation. I don't know that it's that desperate yet. I mean, obviously it's war, which is horrible, but they may still have their own fuel being provided to them. But it may get to the point that as they take these vehicles, they may start to use them for fuel. So something to ponder there. Now, and obviously, this is going to happen on the hills of Israel, is what we're talking about in Ezekiel 39. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for Rosh and all these nations. And we know Israel is, they're battling things out there now with Hamas and Iran and so forth. So who are part of that prophecy in Ezekiel, Persia. So it is beginning to percolate. And so we're kind of waiting for that epic moment when they come and they surround Israel. We may or may not be here at that moment that takes place. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that tonight. So be sure to join us for tonight's conversation as we dig a little deeper. We're going to be looking at 10 reasons for the rapture and or tribulation to occur in 2022. So, and there's not much left to 2022, especially on the Jewish calendar. So be sure to join us for that. It's going to be very interesting as we talk about that together. So one more thing on this, and that is in Revelation 18, it talks about the great Babylon, Mystery Babylon, who many believe to be the USA, being destroyed in one day. And what else can destroy a country in one day than a nuclear war, right? There's a lot of other ways to fight a war, but they take a long time. As we see, the war with Ukraine and Russia has been going on since February, so it's not going to happen in one day. But a nuclear war could certainly do the job. Therefore, in one day, her plagues will overtake her, death, mourning, and famine. Hey, Glenn, thanks so much. Thanks so much for subscribing. Appreciate that. Welcome to the fellowship. It's great to have you. You've been raptured in with us into our fellowship and join us in the chariot of fire. Thanks so much for joining us today. Therefore, in one day, her plagues will overtake her, death, mourning, and famine. She will be consumed by fire. Consumed by fire. How else can you consume a whole nation by fire? This is talking about Mystery Babylon. Now, it's a mystery because part of it is we don't know who is this Babylon. Now, God does this a lot in Scripture where he uses another city like Sodom and Gomorrah to refer to another town, and he's relating it to their sin, right? Not because it is Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed already, but he will call, for example, Israel Sodom and Gomorrah at times to indicate the kind of sin that they're exhibiting, or even they'll call them Egypt, or and so Babylon is used in a similar fashion, but there are some very specific descriptions that seem to point to been dominant over the entire world for some time as being this nation. She will be consumed by fire, for mighty is the Lord, her God who judges her. Now that's in one day, but it also talks about it happening in 1 hour, which really points to a nuclear bombing, because nuclear war, it happens in minutes. In minutes, those nuclear missiles fall and they land and you're done. So it doesn't take much time for a nuclear war. It says, terrified at her torment, they will stand far off and cry, woe, woe to you, great city, you mighty city of Babylon. In 1 hour, your doom has come. And let's look at the next one. It says it 3 times in 1 hour. In 1 hour, such great wealth has been brought to ruin. Every sea captain and all who travel by ship, the sailors and all who earn their living from the sea will stand far off, as they say here, woe, woe to you, great city, dressed in fine linen, purple and scarlet, glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls. Now, some believe that might be the Catholic Church because it's purple and scarlet, and they do wear that. There's a lot of interesting tie-ins that we have to consider on a spiritual level here, too, not just on a physical level. But there's a spiritual destruction, like the destruction of false Christianity in the world and things like that. Says, when they see the smoke of her burning, they will exclaim, the smoke of her burning. Okay, there's a lot about her burning. Okay, remember, God's not going to destroy it by a flood this time. He's going to destroy it by fire, the fire and brimstone. When they see the smoke of her burning, they will exclaim, was there ever a city like this great city? Now, this word city is, you think, well, it says city. Does it mean nation? Are we counting nation as a city? Now, city is like, polis. Let me see what this one is real quick. Similar or resembling. Okay, like. Okay, saying like the city. But this word is polis, kind of like metropolis, right? And it says a city, one's native city, the city, one's the heavenly Jerusalem, the abode of heaven, the inhabitants of a city, perhaps a town or a city of greater or less size. So, it's interesting to think about. You wonder is it kind of like destroying. Is it going even beyond a physical place and going to on a spiritual level, destroying the places of false, I think of false Christianity or false falseness, I guess, false godliness. But there is a lot of description here, like the sailors and the ships traveling to her, which does tie in a lot with the USA. They will throw dust on their heads, etc. And one more here on this 1 hour. It says, they will throw dust on their heads and with weeping mourning cry out, woe, woe to you, great city, where all who had ships on the sea became rich through her wealth. See, that would seem to point to America. Now, you could argue China, but China got rich from our wealth, right? So China is the ships delivering it, but we are the ones who actually paid for it. So in 1 hour, she was brought to ruin. Right, in 1 hour. So very intriguing. It's done with fire, smoke, and burning. And all the ships are surrounding, standing far off, which has been happening on the shores of the U.S. for some time where they couldn't dock. So a lot of interesting connections there and some things to consider. So just a quick one for you guys. And we'll be back. I may come back with some more today. Hey, good to see you, Annie and KR and Kenneth, Telmo, Thankful Gamer. Great to see you guys. And I may come back with some other updates today, but definitely we'll see you later this evening for our regular time as we dig deep in the Word, talking about the end times and rapture and tribulation and all that. Well, it's all good stuff when it comes to Jesus coming back, right? That part is the good stuff. And everything else is just kind of some of the stuff we have to look at as we prepare for that time and we get people prepared and wake them up to what's really going on in the world. So, amen. Gina, good to see you as well. All right, guys, talk to you soon. May God bless you.